Welcome back to another exciting episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm your host, Seb Fry, and today I'm excited to have Alice Shikina as my guest. Alice is a professional mediator and conflict resolution strategist who has spent more than a decade helping families, couples, and workplaces navigate some of their hardest conversations. From divorce and co parenting to family disputes around aging parents, Alice brings compassion, clarity, and a gift for turning conflict into connection. Alice, thank you so much for joining me here today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Ed, for having me. I am a mediator and an arbitrator. I'm also a negotiation coach. And my background, because people usually ask, what is your background to become a mediator? I have a background in acting. So I have a degree in acting, and those acting skills basically correlate directly into my mediation and negotiation practice because we use a lot of the same skill sets that we learned in acting.
I wanted to be an actor, and like when I was growing up, like I wanted to be like a movie star. And actually, I went to ACT in San Francisco. You know, ACT in San Francisco,
Yes.
American Conservatory Theater. Yeah,
Yep.
so I did that for a few years, and I was an understudy and stuff like that. And my younger son, he's in plays all the time. He's an actor. He's in like three or four plays a year. He's really into it. Tell us about theater. Like, where did you go to theater to study theater, and did you actually have like an acting career? Did you do much actual stage work or
So,
cinema or?
yeah, so I am a theater actress, not so much film, although I have a what do you call those cameo small part in Steel Magnolias. I don't know if you're familiar with
Oh,
that little
sure, of
movie
course.
with Julie Roberts. So I
Yes.
have a part in there. We are Christmas carolers in that movie, so you can see me when you watch the movie.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go
Uh,
watch
yeah, so
again. I mean,
uh, yeah, so I basically trained as an actress. I started acting when I was 13. My very first musical was Snoopy. I played Lucy from, the Snoopy musical. And then when I went on beyond college, I actually switched and I decided to become a director. So then I directed and I wrote one play which actually went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. It also went to Hawaii. So it's called Okinawa 1945, and it's a historical drama based on the nurses of Himeuri in Okinawa, Japan during the Battle of Okinawa. And then when I moved to San Francisco in 2000, I actually directed for a small theater company at that time called Three Wise Monkeys Theater Company, and we produced local playwrights' first plays. So that's what we were doing. We specialized in those.
wow, that's super cool. So you moved to San Francisco, which means you moved from somewhere. So where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in the deep South in southern Louisiana, which is typically considered Cajun country. And then I went to college at Miami of Ohio.
Wow, so you've been around. So Cajun country. So can you talk Cajun? Like,
No, I cannot.
I wouldn't even know how to pretend to talk Cajun, really. It's beyond me. But that's interesting. So you grew up in the deep South in Louisiana, and then you went to you said Miami for college.
In Ohio.
So Miami, Ohio. There's a Miami in Ohio.
Yes, in
Is there
Oxford,
really?
Ohio. Just to confuse it even more, there is a Miami of Ohio in Oxford, Ohio.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. And then you ended up in San Francisco, and you were doing directing, which sounds like a lot of fun. Help me understand the transition from working as a director in San Francisco to doing like professional mediation. How does that happen?
Yeah, so I was in theater until I had my second child, at which point it's very difficult to stay in theater if you're doing rehearsals from 7 to 10 at night because they directly like
Right. That's
conflict with.
bedtime.
Yes, exactly. So as soon as I had my second child, which was 2008, that was when my theater career abruptly stopped. So at the time, I was working as a graphic designer. I worked as a graphic designer until about 2013. And then I became a Lyft driver part time when in its like early stages when we still had those pink mustaches that were like plastered on the front of the car and they were furry and all that stuff. So that's way back then. And then I started working for startups for about 5 years. And then while I was doing Startup World, I was also mediating for a company part time. So I was mediating between au pairs and the host families who hosted them whenever they had any kind of issue come up. And so that transitioned me later when I got let go, through layoffs. I decided I would leverage my mediation experience to start my own company. So I went and got certified. I started mediating, and now that's basically my story.
So mediating for au pairs sounds like a super niche occupation. So I mean, and you said you got certified after. So how did you fall into like mediating with au pairs? That seems like so random.
It is. So the job itself is actually an area director position. And so the job is not a mediator, just part of the area director job, which is managing the host families and making sure you're welcoming, interviewing host families, and welcoming the au pairs when they come in from another country. And there's a lot of things involved. So mediation is probably like 5% of that job. And so I did that for 10 years, right? So I did that until I think 2023. So I was able to leverage the small amount of mediation that I did into an actual career.
All right. Well, that's super interesting. So I guess you loved mediation. Was there? So you must, right? I mean, to leverage that from like that into like, okay, I'm going to become a professional mediator. What do you love about mediation that you make this now your main gig?
That is a great question. I love it because I help people go from a place of impasse to a place of peace and forward motion, right? Usually people come to me because they're stuck. And it's kind of funny, Seb, because sometimes people call and they go, "We don't understand, how do you actually help us because we can't move forward. So, how in the world can you do that?" But I'm like, that's my magic. That's what I do. I help people get out of impasse, out of conflict, and then they can move forward with their lives. So, it brings me a lot of satisfaction to be able to help people that way.
Yeah. So you took a mediation certification. Like, can anyone become a mediated, like a certified mediator? Like, who does that? Do you go to like university or is it an online course done by Zoom or what is that like?
Yeah, so they do have online courses. It's a 40-hour certification. And while anyone can get certified, there are two ways to mediate. There's the community volunteer mediator. So if somebody really loves it, they can go and do that and they can be a community mediator. However, there aren't too many jobs where someone hires you to mediate. Usually they're hiring you as a contractor to mediate a conflict and then you're done. And so if somebody really wanted to be a serious mediator, they would also have to be open to becoming an entrepreneur, basically running their own business.
Right. And that's you. You are a solo entrepreneur who does mediation for all kinds of different stuff, as I understand it. So I'm looking at your website and I see that you do a variety of different kinds of mediation. So, um, what do you find yourself mostly mediating these days? I mean, like, where's the bulk of your practice?
So I do a lot of divorces. A lot of people are getting a divorce and they don't want to go through the court system. So they will call me and they'll say, let's get this done via amicable mediation. So I help them do that. And I also do workplace conflict mediation. So those are not the ones where there are lawsuits, but the ones where it's an intrapersonal like issue. Someone doesn't like someone doesn't like how they're being treated by someone else in the company. And so they have a conflict. It slows down, the progress of their work. And so they call me up to try to help resolve those problems.
How do you resolve the problem when somebody doesn't like somebody else? That seems like a hard one to get around.
It is. And it's interesting because people always say, "Oh, you do divorce? That seems really difficult." But I have to tell you that divorce mediation is easier than workplace conflict mediation in that divorcing people have the same goal. It's to get a divorce. Whereas if you and I are having conflict at work, we may not have the same goal in mediation. Your goal might be, I would like for Alice to get fired. And my goal might be, I would like Sub to get fired. And so it is much more difficult because they may not come in with the same goals.
Right. So you always hear that in divorce, like, oh, you should go get a mediation first. And so how does that actually work? I mean, like, I would think that in a divorce, like you said, both people have the same goal, but like a lot of the times, one person does not really want to get divorced, right? And they might be hoping that in the mediation they will reconcile. So has that been your experience, and how do you work through that?
So every once in a while, there are couples that come through where one side says, "I am not interested in getting a divorce," but in California, if someone files for divorce, you're going to get divorced. So really, what happens is, if you didn't want to get a divorce and your wife does, Once she files, it's moving, right? It's you're going to get a divorce and you still have to figure out the asset split. You still have to figure out what to do with the home. So you could potentially delay it, but you cannot stop it, right? So you can try to slow everything down by not getting the papers in on time, not getting the house evaluated, not coming up with final decisions about things. So you could make it difficult, but you couldn't make it impossible.
Right. So, as part of your mediation work in divorce, do you actually manage to get people to like speed it up, right, rather than dragging it out? Because I know that a lot of times when people get divorced, it takes like a long time and costs a lot of money, right? They like a friend of mine, he got divorced already. He spent, I don't know, I think they spent between the two of them close to like $100,000 on lawyers, right? And he wanted to go mediation. She didn't want mediation, and they spent 100 grand, and then they did end up mediating at the very end because they ran out of money.
Right. Yes. So that does happen. And mediation is a voluntary process. So very much like you said, if one person out of two says, I do not want to mediate, I cannot force them, neither can the other party force them because it is completely voluntary. Now, as you mentioned, sometimes just spending a lot of money is incentive enough to get people to mediation because once they've spent an inordinate amount of money, they get tired of spending it. I mean, one 15-minute phone call with their attorney can cost them $500. So if you keep on doing that and you're racking up all these bills because you called for 5 minutes and you asked a question and you did it again, right? So a lot of times that is an incentive to push them to mediation because in mediation, like I can get people done in 3 to 5 sessions.
Really? Wow, that's pretty fast. 3 to 5 sessions. That's
It is.
amazing. I wish my friend would have called you a few years ago. So, all right, but now what about like other family kinds of mediation? Like what other reasons are there where a family would hire you? Let's say the family does not have an au pair. What other reasons would they be calling a mediator for?
So one of the big ones is inheritance disputes. So you can imagine, let's see, I had one where there were 7 siblings. They all inherited the family home that they grew up in. 2 of the 5 did not want to have anything else to do with the home. So the other 5 said, fine, you can be relieved of your duties. And they said, hold on, hold on, hold on. We would like to be paid out. And then it was a huge conflict because 5 of them did not believe that their mom and dad had ever expected them to have to pay another sibling out for exiting for release of the family home, right? So there was that. Sometimes people are fighting about someone wants to keep it, somebody else says we should sell it. There's all of that stuff. So there's inheritance disputes and there's also estrangements. So maybe like people had a huge blow up, they stopped speaking to one another and they want to repair the relationship. So mediation is a great way to start, especially when people are very, very nervous about even starting a conversation because they haven't spoken to one another or it was very contentious. And so a lot of times they'll come to me and say, hey, we would like to repair our relationship, but we need a mediator because we are afraid that we're going to start yelling at each other when we start talking. So mediator can really help that process.
So, do you get into a room with these people, or is it all done via Zoom?
So currently I do everything over Zoom, but I can always get into the room. I mean, I started off my career going into the same room with all the au pairs and the host families and even with my divorcing couples. But since COVID in 2020, I've switched to Zoom and it's very easy for people because they don't have to travel somewhere to meet me. They can be in the comfort of their own home and it's just as effective.
Right. Okay. So now, in the case of this family of with 5 siblings, like that's like a lot of people to like get on board with something. So how did you get them to agree? Like, I mean, it's easy for the three who are didn't want the house, right? I mean, obviously they want the money, but how do you get the other ones to like cough up the money? Or did
So,
they cough up the money? Or did they all sell? They all split up? What happened to those guys?
you mean cough up the money to buy
To
out
buy
the.
that to buy out their to buy out their siblings.
Yeah, so it was very interesting. What happened in that particular, number one, to get them all on board, the reason why it succeeded is because they put it all on one person to organize it. They all said, fine, because if you had 7 people arguing about who's going to be the mediator, are we going to use it, are we not, then it could get messy. They just allocated that all the responsibilities to one sister and said, you go find somebody, you organize it, and we will just be there, right? So that's number one. Then what was very interesting is that during the course of the negotiation, it turned out that one of them wanted a certain amount of money and the other one said, it doesn't matter to me. Just give me something on principle. So I pointed that out and I said, how much money were you all planning on, paying out? And they had a sum, a certain sum. I said, okay, so why don't you give the brother who wants a certain amount, the certain amount, and give the other brother less? And they said, but that's not fair. I said, okay, but it would resolve the issue. One person cares and the other one does not. So once we got past that, they all agreed. They talked a little bit about it and then they decided, okay, that's fine, we can do that. So initially they were not even considering something like that because they were stuck in their minds that whatever we pay one brother, we must pay the other brother. And I said, okay, but you have one brother who doesn't care what the amount is. He just says, pay me something. So you can easily resolve it if you already have a pot of money that's allocated towards buying somebody out. You will just give one brother a little bit more because he's asking for a specific amount. And they were able to get it resolved that way.
So you mentioned that that the success from that one was because you had one person choose the mediator. Are there ever multiple mediators?
It can be. You can have co-mediations. Probably usually two, not usually more than two, but you can definitely co-mediate. Co-mediation is a model. And so basically you have two mediators. It is not so much that you have your mediator, Seb, and I have my mediator. It's literally that there are two mediators, and they're there for various reasons. And so let's say that you and I can't agree, and you say, I definitely want this person, and I say, well, I want this person, then you can hire both of them. It's twice the cost, but it resolves the issue of who are we going to use.
Does anybody want to bring a lawyer ever?
Sure. So there are several kinds of mediations that lawyers show up at all the time. So divorce is not one of them. Like almost 0% of the time are lawyers present during a divorce mediation for my clients. However, personal injury, there will be lawyers on both sides for
Oh,
sure. Yeah,
interesting. And so, what are the lawyers doing if you're mediating? Are they just sitting there taking notes and like whispering into their client ears, or like what are they actually doing?
basically, yes. They're So the way it happens is a lot of times they want caucuses, right? And a caucus to mediation means it's separate in separate rooms. And so some of them never, ever, ever see each other. They're in separate rooms from the beginning and they're only with their respective attorneys. And so I will go in and communicate something to them and then I get kicked out of the room. And while I'm out of the room, they're talking to one another, dealing, wheeling and dealing. And then they call me back into the room to tell me what to go tell the other side. So a lot of times I don't even get to hear the conversations because they want to keep it super confidential just between attorney and client.
Right. Well, it must be pretty easy when it's on a Zoom, right? Because they just hit mute.
Yeah, yeah.
then then nobody's going to know. So what about like a situation for like like sort of like a an elder situation where it's like maybe maybe there's a case where maybe it's time to like move into like an assisted living community or something like that, and the parents don't want to go, and but maybe one of them had a fall, and there's like really good reasons for them to do that. They don't want to go, and then the family is trying to persuade them. Do they ever hire like mediators to come in and help with that kind of situation?
Yes, elder care mediations, and that is actually a thing. And absolutely, those are anytime there's a family dispute and they're having trouble getting to an agreement, and especially if there are multiple parties, those are excellent cases to go to mediation. A lot of times people believe that mediation is for legal disputes only, and that is not true. Anytime there's a dispute or a conflict, even if it would never go to the courts because it's not a legal dispute, people can use mediators to get through that because mediators are there to make sure everyone listens, everyone hears one another, and that they get to some kind of a mutual agreement.
So is there some kind of like standard mediation framework that you use, or is it just like you're going to wing it every time you get into a mediation? There's like a pre-mediation like a questionnaire, or like the way the process starts is always the same, and you step by step, or is it literally just, hey Mike, hey Mary, let's rock and roll, or how does that how does that work?
So I have a framework that I use. I basically have several ground rules, and those ground rules ensure that people listen, they ensure that people are civil, and they ensure that no one is doing bad behavior, right? And so I lay those out. I also let people know that I will be policing those rules. And so usually people either police themselves or they listen to me when I let them know, by the way, you agreed not to interrupt. You're interrupting right now, right? And so we keep the entire process civil. I also make sure that I give them clues on what they should look for in order to call for a breakout room. So I might say something like, so Seb, if you're feeling like your heart is racing, your breathing is getting shallow, you're getting a headache, you're getting tension in your jaw, you're feeling upset, frustrated, defensive, anything negative, any of those things, you just ask me for a breakout room. So when I give them that power, people usually take it. In most mediations, someone will look just as calm and cool and collected as you are right now, and they will say, hey, Alice, maybe we should go into breakout rooms now. Then we go right away.
What happens to the breakout rooms? Like everyone is like separate, or do you hang out with one of them in the breakout room, or you switch back and forth between them, or
Yeah, I switch back and forth. I tell them I do not spend an equal amount of time. I spend an equitable amount of time to get everyone to the middle. Because sometimes I have to spend more time with one party to pull them to the middle. So I always tell them it's not about 15 minutes with you and 15 minutes with them. It's whoever I need to spend time with in order to get you to a successful agreement. But yes, I am going back and forth and I'm having private conversations and I only bring back whatever information they want me to bring out to the other side.
so how do you get people off of extreme positions, right? I'm sure that people like put out extreme positions because of all kinds of reasons, but how do you get them to come to the center?
So I'm also a negotiation coach, as I mentioned, and so I use those skills when I'm in my mediation. So I might ask a question such as, "Hey Seb, can you?" This is like when we're in a separate room, right? I might say, "Seb, can you give me an offer that you think the other side will accept?" And then I go to the other side and I say the same thing. Make me an offer that you think you can get the other side to accept. So then that gets us closer to some kind of a middle ground. There are also tools like the mediator's proposal is one where you can get both parties to agree that, will you agree to whatever Alice says? And so if they both agree, then I get to make the call, which I think is the most reasonable one. And they
That's
pre-agreed. They pre-agreed to like accept whatever it is. So that's another way to break the impasse. Um, Sometimes I might say, Seb, will you agree to this number if I can go get them to agree to it? So I'm kind of getting pre-agreements. So you might say, well, if you can get them to agree, then I'll agree. So that I'm doing that, right? Or there are other ways where I can keep confidentiality. I might say, Seb, what is your lowest number? And I'm going to go find out what their highest number. And I'm going to come back and I won't tell anybody the numbers, but I will tell you if there's overlap. So that way I can come back and tell you there is overlap. You will be able to get to an agreement. Or I might say, there is no overlap. So no matter how much you negotiate, if that is your bottom line, we're not going to get to a resolution. So there are many tools that a mediator can use to get people to a completed agreement.
well, those are all very handy tips. I need to write those down for my real estate practice. So, are these agreements binding agreements, or how does that work? Like, okay, you agree in the Zoom call, all's lovey-dovey. The next day, it's like, ah, screw you. I mean, like, are they binding in any way, or what?
So that is an it depends answer. So if you're getting a divorce, usually it's the marital settlement agreement that is binding, but the MOU that I write up goes into the marital settlement agreement, and once that is signed, it is binding. If I'm doing a real estate mediation, typically there will be a lawyer who will put it together. They may or may not be in the mediation. Sometimes they're not. And then I just give the MOU to the clients. They take that MOU, bring it to their lawyer, and it drafts it into a contract form, and everyone signs it. So there's ways to make sure that the agreement is legal and binding.
So, but does it happen where like everyone agrees, like at the end of the like it's 5 o'clock quitting time, we're done, we agreed, kumbaya, and then the next morning they wake up and they're like, no. I mean, like, does these agreements? I mean, they must fall apart all the time. And then do you go back again, or do you like not renegotiate with
It
anybody?
depends. So sometimes they renegotiate, right? And sometimes they decide, I don't really like mediating, I'll rather go to court. And so it just really depends because some people might be conflict averse enough that they don't even want to try to resolve it on their own. They rather just pay a check to a lawyer to say, you go deal with them. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So it really depends on the situation. But yes, people do go back on their agreements. And also it's interesting, I've had something almost the opposite where they did not agree at all and the mediation time came to an end. And they said, okay, fine, bye, bye. And as soon as everyone hung up, the other side called me back and said, okay, we will go up by this much. And then I called the other side back and they said, okay, fine, we'll do it. So they came to an agreement after everybody said goodbye and hung up.
So you set out a specific number of hours or sessions or at the beginning of the mediation process? You're like, we have to come to an agreement in 5.5 hours or
So typically my sessions are a minimum of 2 hours, but that doesn't mean that they can't go over. I try to leave enough time for them if they need to go over, so they could go over an extra hour. Sometimes they go over an extra 2 hours.
right. So you said that a divorce might take 5 sessions, right? Maybe 3 to 5, you said. So that means 10 hours. You can mediate a divorce in 10 hours because, like, I just saw my friend do that for 2 years and $100,000. And you could
Yeah,
do that in 10 hours. Are you
yeah,
serious? Really?
dead serious.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a much better deal. So, all right, I'll keep your name and number for the next divorce I come across. But how about like patient advocacy? Like when it comes to like mediating with your insurance company or your healthcare provider or something like that. What kind of work do you do along those lines?
So I am an arbitrator, and I do some arbitrations between the hospital, especially when it's out of network emergency room, with insurance. So they're usually fighting on paper, and then I review the paper claims, and then I make an arbitration award. But one of the things that I wanted to, have your listeners think about is negotiating, not the price, but negotiating care with your doctor. Because I have found that frequently just asking for something or just telling them, hey, by the way, this thing is bothering me, is not enough to negotiate the care that you need. And so I have found that it is really, really important to advocate strongly. And I know that some people are like, well, I don't want to be the squeaky wheel, or, well, I don't want to be that annoying patient who keeps on complaining. But sometimes you have to advocate for yourself to get the care that you actually need, because guess what? No one else is doing that. Only you.
So the other day at my Rotary Club, I ran into a woman and she had been a nurse with the VA, and then she became a professional patient advocate for 7 years after she left the VA, and that was her business. She, like, the patient goes to meet with the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, like, you need to have this procedure, or you can't have that procedure, or something," and the patient, um, feels differently. Uh, but yet they don't know how to like fight the power, beat the system, or just like overcome those objections. Is that something that you can help people with?
Yes, I absolutely can. I do a lot of negotiation coaching. And so sometimes people hire me to do the coaching piece of it, or they might just say, can you please just go negotiate for me? So I can do that for sure. But I'm going to give you just an example. I have a friend who had gallstones, and she had surgery to remove them. And then she still had pain. And so she called the doctor and said, I'm still having pain. And they said, that's post op pain. Okay, she could have just been like, doctors know best. But she knew that there's something that was not post-op pain. She's like, this is not post-op pain. It's very, very painful. She called twice again. And they kept saying, this is normal. You need to just wait. It will get better. And so she had to continually advocate for herself. And finally, they relented. And finally, they said, fine, we will take a look. We're telling you, it is just post-op. She had a gallstone stuck in her liver.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So, so who are you talking to? I mean, like she gives you the doctor's phone number and you call him up or her up and you talk to the doctor directly, or who are you negotiating with at the medical provider side?
Yeah, so usually like they'd have to be on the call with me, right? And then they can call their doctor and or whoever they can get in touch with and talk to them to say, "Hey, this is something that's really bothering me and I really feel like I need some kind of care. That the care that you're providing is not enough or it's not sufficient." Because you kind of have to, in some instances, have to be the squeaky wheel, because otherwise they write you off and they're just like, next, right? You're just like a number for them. And so if the one thing that I feel like people really, really deeply need to think about is that you know your body the best, better than any doctor. You know yourself. So if you feel like something is off, then you shouldn't just take a doctor's word over yours just because they are a doctor and they're supposedly the medical expert, because you are the expert of your own body. So if you feel like there's something wrong, keep asking questions, keep advocating for yourself, because it's the only way that you're going to get the care that you need.
Yeah, so a friend of mine, she had thyroid cancer, and I guess she just had her thyroid either wholly removed or partially removed a few months ago. And since then, she's picked up like a tremor in her jaw, right? Like her jaw is always like not always tremoring, but like like it's spasms, I guess you would say, periodically throughout the day. And I don't know why a thyroid surgery would do that, but the doctors just said it's normal. So she doesn't feel it's normal. So, what would this? I mean, and I guess she's talked to the doctor a few times, and the doctor keeps assuring her that there's nothing that they can do, and you know, like, um, and that it's normal. So, like, what would be the actual steps that one would take, in if one were in her situation? Would she uh, just call you and make an appointment with you to hop on the phone with a doctor at some time, or would she file some kind of form with state or with the medical provider, or what steps
I
should
would
be taken?
say, in her particular case, I would definitely get a second opinion because I have been in positions where doctors said, take ibuprofen. That's it. And I was like, okay, but this is like a chronic pain and I don't want to live my entire life taking, ibuprofen. And his response was, I'm the doctor and you're not. Who has the degree? And literally, like, I had to fight that system. So if some doctor says, yeah, that's just normal, it means they're not caring enough to look into it, or they're not caring enough to figure out how can we fix it. Who cares if it's normal? If it's normal, fix it. Right? I would argue to say, if this is normal, then you must know how to fix it because it's happening normally. So I think that you just need to push, and if they are blocking you, go somewhere else. Find someone who
So
can help you.
do you get a lot of pushback from doctors then? I mean, because you're not, I mean, I can hear the doctor saying the same thing. You, Alice, you're just a mediator. You're not a physician. Like, like I'm going to tell you how it is, not you're telling me how it is. I would imagine you get quite a bit of angry pushback from doctors on that because you're challenging them and they're the experts supposedly.
Yeah, so that's when I go somewhere else. I'll go to a different doctor, or I'll just keep pushing and I'll say that's not enough. Or I'll say, you need to get x rays done. And they'll say, no, we don't, because we already know. And I'm like, I don't care. Get the x rays, get the x rays, get the x rays, right? Or the MRI or the CT scans, whatever. And you just have to ask more than once. So you just can't take no for an answer, or you can't take that's normal for an answer. You have to keep digging. And a lot of times it just requires you to do your own research, whether it's online or chat GPT or whatever it is, because they might be a medical expert, but you're expert on two things. One, your own body, and two, you might be the expert on whatever you're suffering from because you have all the time in the world to go research it. They are an expert on like a broad number of medical things, right? Not like just one disease. So if you're suffering from one thing and you're going and doing lots of research, you might end up knowing a lot more than the actual doctor does about that particular like illness or ailment.
So what if it's a situation where like the person is like old maybe, or they just have some condition where they're in a very weak state and they don't really have it in them to like call up and like advocate for themselves. Can they give you like power of attorney, and do you just ever do it yourself, or?
I haven't done it that way, so I'm not sure. But here's the thing: there are biases in the world. There's ageism, there's sexism. I mean, all these things come into play in the medical industry. So what I would say is, if this person is older, they're probably going to face ageism. For them to find someone in their circle, whether it's an adult child or someone who is younger or male, to be able to go fight, because people are seen differently, right? If you show up as a woman, you're going to get a different reaction than if you show up as a guy. That's just been my experience. And I'm on top of that, I'm Asian. So an Asian female, I will not have the same experience as you do. If you go in and complain about something, they'll probably take you more seriously than they take me. And that's just a bias that exists. So in order to fight that, try to bring an advocate who is not necessarily going to have to evoke the bias of the medical provider.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I never go to medical providers unless I'm absolutely forced to. I generally avoid them like the plague. Um, well, that's interesting. Now, I also saw that on your website that you won some kind of award from the city of San Francisco. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, the Ray Schoenholtz Award. So that is a visionary award that's given by community boards. Community boards is the oldest organization in America providing community mediation services. And so every year they give that award to one mediator who they feel like has really done a lot of work. And so I do a lot of peacekeeping and mediation in San Francisco. I am a volunteer mediator for DPA, the Department of Police Accountability. And so I do volunteer mediations between police officers and citizens who feel like they're not happy about the interaction that they've had with the police officer. I also do some mediations between low income housing tenants and their property managers or landlords. And so that's another bit of work that I do in San Francisco, as well as all the divorce mediation. So I got selected this past year, so I just got the award for 2025. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal. So, community mediation. So you're like representing whole like neighborhoods or blocks or like who exactly is the community?
So the community would be the citizens who are trying to mediate with the police officers. They're also the people who live there who are asking for mediation so that they don't get evicted or that they get along with their neighbors. Because a lot of times we have neighbor to neighbor disputes where they're fighting. Sometimes we have HOA disputes where people are not feeling heard by their HOAs. And so we'll do mediation so that we can address whatever issues that people are having with their HOAs as well. So all of those different community members come across me via mediation.
So what's it like mediating between a cop and a community member? I mean, like cops don't strike me as like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I mean, like, right? It's like usually my way or the highway, right? They're the authority figure, right? So like, how does that work?
So it's only a 60-minute mediation, and really it's not so much of like, okay, let's make an agreement and let's fill out a form, right? It's more about deeper understanding. So it could be that the community member comes in and says, I don't like the way that you yelled at me. And then the cop has a chance to explain their perspective. And they might say, well, it's actually my job to keep you safe. And you were doing something, and I asked you politely 2 times, and you didn't listen to me. And I had to raise my voice because really you have to stop doing that immediately because it's unsafe, right? And so then kind of explain why they're doing what they're doing. And then usually there's a deeper understanding from both sides. There's a deeper understanding from the community member as to how policing works, and there's a deeper understanding from the police officer as to how their actions impacted that individual. And so once they get to a deeper understanding, usually they're like, okay, I got it. Thank you very much for spending time with me explaining everything. And then that's the end of it. So that it doesn't usually end with some kind of an agreement. It usually ends with a deeper understanding from both sides.
So is that a large part of the mediation gig is basically helping people to like hear each other and understand what their point of view is? Is that basically the rub?
Yes, that is a lot of mediation. Correct.
Right. Well, I can see that must be kind of fun, right? To get people to be able to communicate better. So basically, like people are just not communicating correctly, and that the process is you ask them a bunch of different questions and find out, what really is going on, and you um, transmit that information to the other side in a way that both parties are comfortable with, and get them to come together. That's kind of the gig, huh?
Exactly. It's very fulfilling.
Yeah, I can imagine it is very fulfilling. So, where do you see this going? Like you just said, you just started this in 2023.
No, I started my business in 2016.
In 2016. What happened in 2023? I must have misheard something.
I'm not sure what happened in
No,
2023.
I must have
Oh,
misheard
I know.
something.
I actually was doing the part-time au pair job from 2013 to 2023.
Right. Okay. All right. So, you've been doing this for since 2016. So, where do you see this going? I mean, I see that you also have like a master class that you do, and unfortunately, I missed your master class. I mean, do you do more of those, or like, are you going to make this a brand? Where are you taking this like long term?
Yeah, so I do a lot of different things, as you noticed. So I have a negotiation communication course that I teach once or twice a year. And then on top of that, I do arbitrations, like I talked about, and I'm doing a lot of training with the mediation. So I do mediation as well as coaching. So I love to coach teams in organizations on communication, conflict resolution, and negotiation. So that way they are able to lead better because they've got the skills to be able to communicate better. Because without those communication skills, it's very difficult to lead, especially if you're trying to keep people accountable. Because if you don't know how to talk to people without offending them, people go around offending people because they're like, oh, I'm just direct. I'm just telling you. Just do it. Do it because I told you. I told you already. Or I'm going to fire you unless you do it. And then people are getting upset, right? So I go in and I coach on how to communicate in a way that resonates with everyone.
Right. Well, I think that a lot of people are hung up on the idea that they're right and the other person is wrong, right? But and that's most people, I think, are hung up on that. And then I think the key to success is finding something that's not right or wrong, doesn't really matter who's right or who's wrong, but what is a solution that's going to work for both parties, even if one party feels they're right, or whatever. Just like letting go of
Exactly.
their, deeply held position. I can imagine that. So you talk about all these different, mediations that you've done, and my head is kind of spinning because I'm wondering, like, how do you find people like that, right? I mean, like, you have a website. Do they all come in off your website? Are you on Yelp? Are you on Google Business? Or like, where does all this business? I mean, this is like a lot of people you're talking about here.
All of the above. So I'm doing Yelp, I'm doing Google Business, and so people call me from online. So I get a lot of just basically foot traffic, online foot traffic, right? So people are wandering around in on the internet looking for a mediator. They see me. I have really good SEO for San Francisco and the Bay Area. So if someone is looking for a mediator in the San Francisco Bay Area, I will be probably 1 or 2 clicks away if they're Googling mediator.
Right. Oh, really? Wow. So you're like, and so people do that. So like people are like calling you like every day or approximately saying,
Yes.
"Hey, I need a mediator."
Yes.
Wow, that's kind of wild. I would never have thought that. I would have imagined that a lot of it was just like referral from like lawyers and like doctors, and no, it's all
Yep.
online.
Yep. It's cold. I don't want to call them cold leads because they're hot leads, but they're hot leads from complete strangers.
It's cold traffic, hot leads from cold traffic. Wow, that's really hard to do. That's really hard to do. I mean, not. I mean, everyone.
The
That's like
dream.
the that's the dream. Everybody wants that, right? But you actually get that.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
pretty amazing. So I saw something on your website. You actually also do like classes of some kind. Like you have the master class, but I saw you like in front of like a podium or something like that. Do you actually go and do classes for who?
So I actually am a paid speaker.
A paid
So
speaker.
yes, so I am always looking for speaking events, particularly paid speaking events, where I can talk about conflict resolution or talk about communication or talk about negotiation. So any of those topics are ones that I'm an expert on, and so I usually am looking for those opportunities. And so I think the photos you're looking at are from the Toastmasters. So I spoke about a year ago at Toastmasters International Convention.
Oh,
So
no
that's
way.
yeah.
Are you a Toastmaster?
I'm not, but I was invited by Toastmasters.
Well, I keep meaning to go to Toastmasters. My brother was a Toastmaster for I don't know how many years, 12, 15, something like that. I don't think he goes anymore because he left the country now. Maybe he's doing Toastmasters in wherever he's living now. But yeah, I want to get into it. It seems like a good gig for people who do speaking, right? I mean, I mean, I do a little. I mean, on my podcast here, my YouTube channel, I do some speaking. So I think I might become a Toastmaster before too long. So, well, would you like to do more of that kind of thing? More, public speaking? I mean, what's the goal? Like here you are. I mean, I guess you're not quite 60 yet. Maybe you're nowhere near 60. I don't know, but like where do you see yourself going? Like, in the next 10 years?
Yeah.
Do you want to head in that direction, or do you want to stay with cold traffic and hot leads?
So I'd love to do more mediations over the next 10 years. And ultimately, my idea is to always mediate, even once I retire, because it's something that, a 2 hour mediation is a small part of your day, right? If you just do 2 hours. And yet, it's like really all that I need is one mediation a day to stay afloat in business. And so the idea is to grow my business such that not only can I retire, but that I can retire and still do a few because I want to keep my mind sharp. I want to keep my communication skills sharp. And I'd also love to keep my conflict resolution skills really sharp.
Like, why would you retire though? I mean, it seems to me like you really love the job, right? So and you can do it from your house. It's not physically
Exactly.
demanding, right? I mean, like there isn't any reason why you couldn't do this at 80 years old. Why,
Exactly.
why, why do you want to retire? Like, why is that even entering your lexicon?
So I love doing a lot of things, Sub. So some of the things I love doing is I started playing the violin 2.5 years ago, and I joined a community orchestra. So I play in that. So I love practicing and playing for that. And I'm also on a rowing team. So we've got a regatta coming up in 2 days. And so I spend my time doing that. So it's just mainly to be able to do more of the things that I enjoy doing. I love traveling. And so it's basically to be able to fit my life into my work life. And so I want to be able to make the income that I need, but at the same time, still be able to do all the extracurriculars that I love doing.
So you picked up violin kind of late in life.
I did.
So how's that going?
It's going well. As a tip for anyone wanting to do any kind of instrument late in life, the key to getting better is joining an orchestra that is where people are better than you, because it requires you to practice more to catch up to them. So if you're just kind of doing it just at your own pace, you'll go a certain pace. But I like leveled up significantly because I got handed a lot of music that I could not play. And in order to not look like a complete idiot during rehearsals, I had to practice an hour every single day. And I was finally able to reach the floor, the bare minimum of, okay, I can play these. I may not be able to play all the dynamics, but I can play the notes and I can play that speed, right? And so I got significantly better. I joined when I was only a year and a half into violin. So now I'm 2.5 years in, and I'm like, wow, I've increased like a lot. My skills are a lot better. So I think just joining any hobby that you want to do, if you want to get better, join a group of people who are better than you.
So what orchestra is this that you joined that would I think a violin player after only a year and a half of of practice or whatever?
So it is it's with Cal State East Bay in Hayward. So it is a community college, but they started off like maybe 2 years ago after COVID, so they didn't have very many people. And so she was like, we welcome anyone in the community because they didn't have enough students that were joining the orchestra. So this year I think they went from about 15 last spring to 50. So it just increased. But yes, it's
Right.
basically
Okay.
college. Yeah.
Well, I have a very technical question about the violin now. What's the difference between a violin and a fiddle?
That is a question I have no idea the answer to because I don't
The
know
answer
anything about
is
fiddle.
the answer is that a violin has strings and a fiddle has strangs. That's my one violin joke that I know. All right. Well, listen, Alice, we got to wrap things up here. But before we do you have any like advice you want to give to anybody who is in some kind of conflict or struggle, whether it's personal and professional or whatever that you want to like, give them a pearl of wisdom to take away, give them some kind of like ray of hope that there might be a way through this?
Sure. Well, one thing is my podcast, Negotiation with Alice, is always there. Every week I have a new episode, so you can listen and get tips there.
Oh, I didn't know you have a podcast.
Yeah. But one of the
Negotiation,
things
Alice.
that I would tell people is if they're in conflict, one of the best things you can do if you're in the middle of an argument is to repeat back what it is that you heard slash understood. And you don't want to just repeat it back like you're a parrot. You want to say something like, hey, Seb, let me make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying. And then repeat the whole thing back. And that will definitively de escalate whatever conflict you find yourself in.
All right, well, that's really cool. And I'm looking at your podcast on Apple Podcasts. My God, you have all these reviews and all these stars. Wow. Maybe I should do that too. Maybe I should get some reviews.
You should come onto my podcast.
Well, maybe I would. I mean, sure. I've not been on a podcast in years and years and years. I just started this one up a little while ago. So I'm having fun with it, though. Well, that's terrific. I'm going to subscribe to your podcast, and I'm going to leave you a review too.
Thank you. Thank you so much
All,
for having me today, Seth. This is
all
so
right. Well,
fun.
thank you. It's been really fun. And now that we've had this conversation, I think your phone's going to be ringing even more because a huge audience who listens to 60 Plus Uncensored. I know there's going to be like, I'm going to call Alice for all my mediation needs, and I'm going to refer you out to like all my, whoever I know who gets divorced needs a mediator. I'm going to say call Alice right away. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being here on the show today, and I will catch you on the flip side.
Sounds great.
All right, that's a wrap for this episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. Huge thanks to Alice Shikina for setting the tone with such honesty and insight. Now, if you like this episode, do me a favor, do Alice a favor, and hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and then share it with someone you know who needs to hear it. Oh, and by the way, if you know anyone over 60 who's still out there doing big things, living boldly, working with purpose, or aging on their own terms, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at team60plus.com or join the conversation at 60 Plus Uncensored on Reddit. I'm Seb Fry, and this is 60 Plus Uncensored. Because as we're learning, life after 60 isn't the end, it's just getting good.
Subscribe now.